Why is Disney slaughtering and burying its shows alive? Disney Plus was supposed to be the golden child of the streaming wars, a huge library of beloved franchises, backed by the seemingly endless resources of the Walt Disney Company. But the platform's wave of cancellations reveals cracks, highlighting a fundamental shift in the economics of streaming. When Disney Plus launched in November 2019, the strategy was simple: scale fast, dominate market share, and hook users with a mix of nostalgia and original content. This meant spending billions on marquee shows like The Mandalorian and rolling out ambitious projects tied to Marvel, Pixar, and Star Wars. The early results were promising. Disney Plus quickly gained tens of millions of subscribers, and by 2022, it boasted over 160 million users globally. The content pipeline was firing on all cylinders, with series like WandaVision and The Mandalorian generating both buzz and viewership. But this rapid growth came at a significant cost. Producing high-quality original content isn't cheap. The average Disney Plus original series ranges from $10 million to $25 million per episode, with big-budget shows like The Mandalorian exceeding $100 million per season. And it wasn't just about creating content. It was also about retaining it. Licensing fees and revenue-sharing deals further cut into profitability. Netflix, Amazon Prime Video, HBO Max, and Apple TV Plus were all investing heavily in content, driving up production costs. Disney's 2023 to 2024 cancellations marked a clear shift in strategy. Shows like Willow, National Treasure, and the Spiderwick Chronicles were abruptly canceled, sometimes even before they aired. Entire projects that were fully completed vanished from the platform, and this wasn't just about viewership numbers. It was about cost management. For context, streaming platforms often engage in what's called content amortization. What this means is a show's cost is spread out over several years on financial statements. Removing a show prematurely allows Disney to take an immediate tax write-off, recouping a portion of those costs. This accounting maneuver was a significant factor behind the Purge, as it allowed Disney to cut losses on underperforming content. One striking example is the recent cancellation of the Spiderwick Chronicles, a fully completed series that was scrapped before it even aired. The rights were later acquired by Roku. By canceling the series, Disney could write off the production costs rather than invest in marketing and risk low viewership. This move highlights how tax benefits and cost-cutting measures are now driving decisions as much as creative or strategic considerations. Despite being a big-budget fantasy series, Willow was pulled from Disney Plus just months after its release, and National Treasure was canceled after just one season. Of course, there are ripple effects. For creators, these cancellations represent broken deals, lost revenue, and projects that get made and will never see the light of day. Showrunners, directors, and writers are increasingly wary of committing to streaming platforms that might axe their work before it's even released. The traditional buyout model, where creators are paid up front, regardless of a show's performance, is giving way to more performance-based compensation. The long-term impact could lead to a talent exodus to platforms that offer more stability and creative control. Another factor behind the Purge is the realization that there's simply too much content. At its peak, Disney Plus was releasing a new show or movie nearly every week, but more content doesn't always mean better. The majority of viewership often concentrates on a few blockbuster hits, such as Game of Thrones for HBO or When The Office was on Netflix, leaving a vast library of underperforming titles collecting digital dust. A 2023 study showed that 80% of streaming viewership was concentrated on just 20% of a platform's content. For Disney Plus, this means that while shows like The Mandalorian and Loki were raking in views, niche series, social political agendas, and experimental projects were barely moving the needle. Another issue is the growing subscription fatigue. With so many options, consumers are increasingly selective about where they spend their money. Churn rates, people subscribing and unsubscribing quickly, have risen across the industry. Nearly 40% of streaming subscribers canceled at least one service in the past year, and Disney Plus was no exception. Disney's content purge, then, can be seen as a response. By cutting underperforming content fast, they can focus resources on fewer, high-impact series that drive sustained engagement. Netflix has also started slashing underperforming content. The broader streaming industry is realizing that the old growth-first model isn't sustainable in a crowded market. The Purge also signals a return to an old business model, licensing content to other platforms. Before the streaming wars, studios like Disney made significant profits by licensing shows and movies to cable networks and rival platforms. With the saturation of original content, Disney is reportedly exploring more licensing deals to generate revenue from older content sitting idle on its own platform. This move is a stark contrast to the early streaming strategy of exclusivity, where having everything under one roof was seen as a competitive advantage. Now, with content costs rising and returns diminishing, maximizing revenue from existing assets becomes the so-called smart play. The content purge is more than just a cost-cutting measure. It signals an identity crisis within the streaming industry. Platforms are now asking tough questions. Is it better to have a broad library that appeals to everyone, or should they focus on fewer high-quality series that guarantee engagement, or maximize revenue through licensing deals? For Disney, the strategy seems to be a hybrid approach. Expect more focus on tentpole releases designed to attract mass viewership, where profitability drives decisions. For Disney+, the purge is just the beginning. In many ways, we're witnessing a return to traditional business models, where quality outweighs sheer volume.